They said she was cursed. They said she brought death to any man who dared look at her. They said her own father had begged the town, on his knees, with tears streaming down his withered face, to take her away before she destroyed them all. That was why, on a gray winter morning in Millhaven, Wyoming, they dragged her into the center of the square with a rough sack pulled over her head and rope cutting into her wrists like she was nothing more than a stray animal. The men laughed. The women turned their backs. The preacher stared down at his boots. But Nathan Cole did not laugh. He stood at the edge of the crowd, tall and utterly still, his broad shoulders wrapped in a heavy buffalo coat dusted with fresh snow. He had come down from the Powder River Mountains only to trade pelts and buy flour before winter sealed the passes. He had not come for this. He had not come for a bride. Yet there she was. The auction block was nothing more than an old wagon turned sideways in the frozen mud. A thin, rat-faced man named Silas Crane stood on top of it, waving a piece of paper in the air like he was hawking fine cattle at a county fair. "Strong back!" Silas shouted, his voice ringing through the cold air. "Young, no sickness, just unfortunate in the face." The crowd chuckled. Someone near the back whistled. The girl did not move. Even with the sack covering her head, Nathan could see something that nobody else seemed to notice. She was not bent. She was not crumbling beneath the weight of their cruelty. Her chin was high beneath the cloth. Her spine was straight. She was standing like a woman who had already survived the worst thing in the world and had nothing left to fear. Nathan felt something crack open inside his chest. "How much?" someone called out from the crowd. $10. Silas barked. $10 and she's yours. You won't even have to look at her. Keep the sack on if you want. More laughter. A drunk ranch hand stumbled forward. Another man muttered he needed someone to scrub his floors. They spoke about her like she was a piece of furniture. Like she was not standing right there, breathing, bleeding, alive. Nathan had seen men die in the war. He had seen widows starve through brutal winters. He had seen things that burned themselves into a man's memory and never let go. But this felt worse. He stepped forward. 20. The number cut through the noise like a rifle shot. Every head turned. Silas Crane's eyes went wide. The girl's hands tightened at her sides. 20, Boone? You sure? You ain't even seen her. I'm buying her work, Nathan said, his voice low and absolutely steady. Not her face. 30, he added, before anyone else could speak. No one topped it. Silas grabbed the leather pouch Nathan tossed onto the wagon. The coins clinked heavy and final. Sold. She's yours, mountain man. Don't come crying when you see what's under that sack. Nathan climbed onto the wagon. He untied the rope from the iron ring. He did not remove the sack. Not here. Not in front of these people who had already taken so much from her. Walk, he said quietly. She stepped down beside him. And together, they walked out of Millhaven under a sky the color of cold steel, and nobody tried to stop them. Keep watching, because what he found under that sack would change everything he thought he knew about strength. They rode for hours without speaking. The snow deepened as the trail climbed into the mountains. The town disappeared behind them like a bad dream you desperately want to forget. Nathan had 2 horses. He rode his chestnut stallion and kept the second horse's lead tied close. The girl rode without trembling, without complaint, without a single word. You can take it off, Nathan finally said, not turning around. No one's watching. Silence. Then, after a long moment, She reached up and loosened the rope around her neck, but instead of pulling the sack off entirely, she only lifted it enough to see the path ahead. Her face remained hidden. Nathan frowned but said nothing. He understood something about needing to choose your own moment. By nightfall, they reached his cabin, a sturdy, rough-hewn structure built against a wall of dark pines near a frozen creek. Smoke rose thin from the stone chimney. Inside, a fire crackled in the hearth and the warm scent of pine filled the air. "Take it off," he said. The girl stood in the center of the room. The firelight flickered against the worn burlap. For a long, aching moment, she did not move. "I won't scream," Nathan said, his voice gentler now. "And I won't send you back." Her hands trembled, just slightly, just enough, as they rose to the sack. She pulled it up and over her head. Nathan had braced himself for burns. For twisted flesh. For something terrible that would explain the cruelty of those people in town. Instead, he gasped. She was beautiful. Not in the polished, fragile way of city ladies. Her beauty was sharp and fierce, strong bones, pale skin, long dark hair falling loose to her shoulders. But it was her eyes that stopped him cold. One eye was bright, vivid green. The other was deep gray, like the color of a storm rolling in from the west. And along her cheek ran a scar. Thin but long. Made not by accident, but with deliberate, calculated cruelty. She stared at him. Waiting for the disgust. Waiting for the flinch. "Well," she said, her voice steady as stone. "Do I look cursed?" Nathan stepped closer. He steadied the scar. He did not look away. "Who did that?" he asked quietly. "My husband." The word sat between them like a stone dropped into still water. "I ran," she continued. "He caught me. He said no man would ever want me again, so he made sure of it. He told the town I was mad. That I tried to poison him. They believed him. The sack was his idea. He said my face frightened him." Nathan felt heat rise behind his eyes. Not fear. Not pity. Pure, white-hot rage. "What's his name?" "Victor Holt." Nathan knew it. Holt owned half the cattle in the valley below Millhaven. A powerful man. The kind who believed money made him untouchable. "What's your name?" he asked. "Clara." She lifted her chin. "Clara Vane." "You can have the loft, Clara. I'll sleep down here." She blinked. Surprised. "You're not afraid?" she asked. "I've seen worse than scars," he said. "And I don't believe in curses. Stay right there, because Victor Holt was already saddling his horse." The next days in the cabin were quiet, and in that quiet, something fragile and real began to grow. Clara worked without being asked. She cooked with a skill that surprised him, cleaned the cabin with the precise efficiency of someone raised in a proper house, and mended his torn coat with neat, careful stitches. One afternoon, Nathan returned from checking traps to find her sitting by the frost-covered window, reading from the old Bible he kept on a shelf. "You can read?" he asked. She looked up. "My father was a schoolteacher." He sat across from her. "Why did you marry him?" Her hands tightened around the book. "I didn't have a choice." On the 6th night, Nathan stepped outside to bring in firewood. He stopped. Tracks, fresh ones. Horse tracks, 3 sets, circling the cabin in the darkness and leading back toward the valley. His stomach turned to ice. He walked back inside slowly. "Pack what you need." Clara looked at him. Fear flashed in her mismatched eyes like lightning across a dark sky. He found us. Not yet, Nathan said, lifting his rifle from above the door. But he's close. Then, a branch snapped outside. The crunch of hooves through snow. And from somewhere in the darkness, a voice that made Clara go completely white. Clara. Victor Holt's voice slithered through the trees like a snake. Come home. You don't belong with that animal. Nathan stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. The door shuddered as someone threw their full weight against it. Open up, Cole. Open up or we burn you out. Clara's breathing quickened. Nathan looked at her. You know how to shoot? She nodded once. He handed her a spare rifle. And what happened next? Clara Vane, the cursed bride with a sack over her head, the broken woman the whole town had discarded, stepped up to that wall and proved every single one of them wrong. They fought through the night. Glass shattered. Wood splintered. Smoke and bitter cold poured through the broken window. Nathan fired through the door. Clara moved to the back wall and aimed into the shadows without hesitation. When the latch began to move slowly, she fired through the wood without a tremor in her hands. A body fell. Silence swallowed the clearing. Then Victor Holt's voice, furious, wounded, retreating, "This isn't over." Nathan watched a figure vanish on horseback into the blowing snow. Alive. Still dangerous. Still coming. He shut the door and barred it. Clara stood shaking now, the rifle still in her hands. He walked to her and gently lowered it. "You did good," he said. She looked at him. Tears broke free at last, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of finally being seen. He won't stop. Nathan stared into the howling storm. Then neither will we. The storm lasted 3 days. Snow buried the cabin halfway to the windows. But Elias knew silence in the mountains never meant safety. It meant waiting. On the second night, he woke to the sound of Clara crying softly in the loft. He lay still for a moment, listening to the sound of a woman who had carried too much, alone, for too long. "Clara," he called gently. The crying stopped. After a moment, she climbed down the ladder. Her hair was loose. The scar on her cheek caught the firelight, and in that moment, Nathan saw it clearly for what it truly was. Not damage. Not shame. A mark that said, "I survived." "I dreamed he found me again," she said. Only this time, no one was there. Nathan stood and walked to the hearth. He added a log. "He's flesh and blood," he said quietly. "Not a ghost. And flesh and blood can bleed." Clara steadied him. "You talk like a soldier." "I was. Union cavalry." He looked at the flames. "I learned something in the war." "What?" "That fear is loud before the first shot. After it, it goes quiet. Then it's just action." She nodded slowly. For the first time, something that looked like peace moved across her face. When the storm cleared and 5 sets of tracks were found circling the cabin, not 3, they both knew waiting was no longer an option. "We take the fight to him," Clara said. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "His supply barn sits at the edge of the property. If that burns, he loses his entire winter feed. He loses power." She met Nathan's eyes. "I don't want revenge. I want freedom." That afternoon, they saddled the horses. The ride down the mountain felt different. Clara did not ride hidden and silent. She rode beside Nathan, her rifle across her back, her mismatched eyes steady on the horizon. They moved through the snow in the dark. The barn was stacked high with hay. Clara pulled a small lantern from her coat. Her hands trembled slightly as she struck a match. Nathan placed his hand gently over hers. No going back after this. She looked at him, and her eyes were clear and certain. There was never going back. She lit the lantern and tipped it into the hay. The flames caught. And somewhere in the burning glow, Clara Vane, the cursed bride, the discarded woman, the girl in the sack, began to become something entirely different. Something Victor Holt had never counted on. Someone free. Victor Holt came back with rage like a wildfire, but this time, Clara stood her ground, stepped beside Nathan through the smoke and chaos, and when Holt reached for his pistol, she raised her rifle with steady hands and said, "You already ended this." She fired. Victor Holt fell backward into the snow. The remaining riders fled into the dark. Silence settled over the mountains like a blessing. Clara walked slowly toward the man who had branded her, hunted her, tried to own her. He lay still. No more shouting. No more chains. Nathan stepped beside her. "It's done," he said. Clara looked up at the vast, dark sky. For the first time since leaving Millhaven, her shoulders, which had carried so much weight for so long, finally, slowly, came down. The winter air felt clean again. That night, Clara did not cry in her sleep. She climbed down from the loft before dawn and sat beside Nathan at the hearth. The fire popped gently between them. Outside, the mountain stood quiet and still. "Thank you," she said softly. Nathan shook his head. "You saved yourself." She reached up and touched the scar on her cheek, a thing she had not done without flinching since the day it was made. "I thought this mark meant I was ruined," she said. Nathan looked at her, truly looked at her, the way he had looked at her from the very first moment in that awful town square. "It means you survived." Spring came slowly, the way good things always do. Snow melted from the peaks. The creek cracked and flowed again. Wildflowers pushed through the thawing earth near the water's edge. One evening in late May, Clara stood outside watching the last light turn the mountains gold. Nathan walked out and stood beside her. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Buying you?" A faint smile crossed his face. "I thought I was buying help for winter." He looked at the glowing peaks. "Turns out I was buying trouble." She laughed, a real laugh, warm and unguarded, the kind that comes only after great pain has finally passed. "Then why keep me?" He turned and met her mismatched eyes, one bright green, one storm gray. "Because trouble like you makes life worth fighting for." "You know," she said gently, "you never asked me to marry you." "I figured you'd had enough of that word." She stepped closer. "With the right man, it means something different." He took her hands in his rough, scarred ones. "No preacher up here," he said. "We don't need one." Under the open sky of the Powder River Mountains, with only pine trees and rushing water as witnesses, Nathan Cole and Clara Vane made a quiet, unbreakable promise. No sacks. No chains. No ownership. Only choice. Years passed. The cabin stood firm through every storm. Word reached them that Holt's death had been ruled self-defense. His ranch fell apart without his control. One day, a letter arrived from Millhaven. The town council had formally cleared Clara's name. She read it slowly, folded it once, and placed it in the fire. "I don't need their approval," she said. Nathan nodded. "You never did." Years later, travelers passing through the mountains told stories of a tall mountain man and a sharp-eyed woman with one green eye and one gray. They said she shot straighter than most men. That he listened when she spoke. That she once rode barefaced through town, scars shining in bright sunlight, daring anyone to call her cursed again. No one did. Nathan Cole had paid $30 for a rejected bride with a sack over her head. He believed he was rescuing a broken woman. The truth was different. She had never been broken. And in the end, it was not the mountains that made him strong. It was her. If this story moved you, if you felt something watching it, please take 1 second to hit that like button. It means more than you know. And if you want more stories like this, stories about strength, survival, and the love that finds you when you least expect it, subscribe right now and ring that bell so you never miss one. Drop a comment below and tell me, what was the moment in this story that hit you hardest? I read every single one.